Podcast for those who are done performing, done people pleasing, and done living life on autopilot. I'm your host, Letitia, the survival mode disruptor, and this is where we create disruptive, unapologetic transformations for those who are ready to exit survival mode and reclaim their power. Every episode is your permission slip to burn the rule book, break the cycle, and finally build a life that feels like yours. So let's disrupt everything that's holding you back and start living life on your own terms. This is your trigger warning. This podcast is raw. It is real and it doesn't sugarcoat what it means to survive trauma, abuse, mental health battles, or even the aftermath of living in survival mode for too damn long. What you hear on Survival Mode Disrupted includes unfiltered stories, graphic details, and a vulnerable truth that may trigger some of the audience. Please prioritize your emotional safety. If something feels too heavy, pause, breathe, come back when you're ready, or not at all. Your healing is yours to honor. These episodes are based on lived experience, not therapy sessions or clinical advice. Listening does not replace mental health treatment or constitute a coach client relationship. If you're in crisis, please seek immediate help from a licensed professional or contact your local emergency services. This space is built with care, but it's also built for truth and built for disruption. Take what you need, leave the rest, and most of all, trust yourself. If this podcast speaks to your soul, you don't have to do this work alone. Feel free to join our free Facebook community for high achieving women ready to break cycles and heal out loud. Join us at Disrupting Survival Mode on Facebook, or grab the book that started this movement, Exiting Survival Mode, raw step by step guide to help you identify, release, and rebuild from the survival patterns that have been keeping you stuck. Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Survival Mode Disrupted. I am your host, Letitia, the Survival Mode Disruptor, and today we have Chanika with us. So, Chanika, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Chanika Darrell, mom of four. Wow, interior designer, property manager, just all around creative. And in my new season, just looking forward to helping, especially young women, but just people in general, to overcome adversity,
Hmm.
basically. Yeah.
I love that. So, how would you describe survival mode?
Oh gosh. For me, that looked like trying to figure it out, trying to be the best mom, but not in the best situations. Trying to mask certain situations and hide my children from the actual reality of what I was dealing with. Smiling when you didn't want to smile. Just carrying on in the normal sense of society. When deep down inside there's like turmoil and just a whole lot of mess going on.
So, why don't you tell us your story to and through survival mode?
Well, so I guess I will start from young. So I was molested at the age of 7. That took me through primary school, just trying to process what had happened while just being a student. And I was intimidated not to say anything. So trying to navigate it all. I was from what I remember. And I say that because trauma hasn't always allowed me to remember certain things. But what I can remember before I was molested was that I was very quiet but fun loving, and then I just became reclusive, like became even more quiet, if that makes sense. Very much to myself, but I did immerse myself in a lot of activities to kind of mask the issues that were going on. I got in a lot of fights. I guess trying to prove who I was to other people in primary school, which then transcend into high school. I went to work academy. I became promiscuous, very promiscuous, from the age of maybe 13. Became suicidal a few times. It was a horrible time. I hated every minute of interacting with other people. I didn't trust anybody. It was just a horrible time. I actually became pregnant at one point while in high school. And oddly enough, persuading the boy that I was pregnant for to punch me in the stomach, and I aborted the baby at home. All while nobody knows, nobody knew what was going on. So that was like the pattern for me. Everything was very close to my chest. And then one day, a friend came to me to tell me a story of what she was going through, and something just, a light switch just came on. And I ran to the counsel's office. And at the age of 15, spilling everything about what had happened to me when I was 7. Child and Family Services had to be called. The police had to be called. To me, it felt like even more trauma was going on at that time. Um, Sadly, during that process, the man who had molested me was served a court summons to appear in court for the charges of child molestation. And he, the next day, hung himself. So I wasn't able to, after months and months and months of preparation, wasn't able to he wasn't able to face me, and I wasn't able to face him in court. That took me on another spiral. You can imagine at 15, still trying to figure out who you are, and with the trauma on top of it, trying to process, is that my fault? Did he kill himself because of me? Um, I later found out that there were other young girls that wanted the process, but retracted their statements because of the fear of having to face him. It took me till maybe in my 20s to understand that was I was their spokesperson. Like I was the person who finally did something about it and really went through to the end, but not without its twists and turns, bad relationships. I became pregnant with my son, my first son, at the age of 18 while navigating college. Again, not a very healthy relationship, still trying to figure out who I was, then becoming a mother, a young mother with a degree in early childhood education. And again, trying to like, who am I to be teaching other children and being this role model, and I don't even have my stuff together. Like it just felt very contradictory. I was always in a battle with myself about my purpose, who I needed to be, good for my children, for myself, for other people. Here I am teaching. Like it was a constant battle. Again, still the suicidal thoughts, the constant questioning other people, their role in my life and how important they were, or even if they were being truthful. I ended up trying to commit suicide while my son was 1. We both got taken to the hospital. I swallowed a whole bottle of Tylenol, and still that wasn't enough to kind of wake me up. I think I was so deep in depression that it had to take something more drastic, if there was something more drastic, because I didn't die. So I felt like, oh wow, okay, well that didn't work. Then I was a police officer. And again, like dealing with people and seeing the travesties on the street and in people's hands somehow struck a nerve for me, like where it somehow amplified the stuff that I was going through. And I don't think I was preferred for a lot of the stuff that I saw. I ended up getting into depression again at the end of my tenure at the police and tried to commit suicide again. I remember my sergeant or inspector at the time coming to my house to kind of talk me out of this rut that I was in, but that was not working. I ended up leaving the police and moving to Georgia, where I was trying to start a new chapter. So I enrolled myself in school to start my degree in interior design and architecture. I met a man, got married, and looking back, a very horrible decision that I made, but I got a beautiful son out of it. So my second son was born out of my marriage. But very abusive. I just felt at that time like I wore a sign on my head that says I'm vulnerable and anybody's free to come and do what they want and as they choose. And I honestly felt that in myself, like from young, is that I was always manipulated into doing something or coerced or whatever. And because I questioned my value, it was very easy, right? It was easy for me to just walk into these situations. I ended up coming in maybe a year into my marriage and trying to just piece things together. He ended up following me back to Bermuda about 6 months later, and the abuse continued to where I tried to commit suicide at that time. This time I was sanctioned to Maui, and he didn't come to visit me. Nobody came to check on me. And as much as I felt that I was kind of in a safe place, I still felt alone. Like I felt like nobody cared about me. What her trying to get help, but when I get out, I don't think anything's gonna change. It took the fourth attempt of trying to kill myself where I finally snapped out of it, if that makes like I came to realization that nobody's gonna get me out but me. Out of the situation, out of my mindset, out of anything. Like I had to do it for myself. And that was the start of the turning point for me. It definitely didn't happen overnight. I was now in my late 20s and mid 30s, and it was a journey. And when I say it was a journey, beginning of my 30s, maybe till just before 40s was when it finally resonated with me that my purpose is to use those situations to empower other people to not only understand that the beginning is not, it just can't be the end, right? The beginning can carry on, and you can't carry that to the end. And that there is battle out there for you, but you have to understand that there is battle out there for you. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
Hmm. Thank you so much for sharing, and so much of your story, like I resonate with heavily. I was molested at 7. I lost my virginity to rape at 12. Highly promiscuous in high school. We went the same high school.
Yes, we did.
Um, I ended up in an abusive relationship from 14, and that relationship ended as a result of me being stabbed. And then it took me another 10 years or so to catch myself. I caught myself in my 30s. Not completely, but at least I got
Mm,
some sense of I kind of have a purpose here. And what really led me in that direction is I ended up getting arrested on my job. Um, because my boyfriend at the time was a crack addict and he stole, and I received the stolen goods unbeknownst to me. And having to be in a cell, I also worked in law enforcement. I was a customs officer, right? So having to be in a cell after I've spent most of my life trying to do the right thing, and my mom came to the jail and she asked me a single question. She said, "Why do you love everyone else more than you love yourself?" And that hit me like a Mike Tyson body blow, I say. It winded me. I didn't know what to say, but then I had to go back and sit in that cell and think. And like that was the turning point for me. But it took so long for me to get there. Like suicide attempt two, just trying to figure it out and wanting to be seen. That I think that's
Mhm.
what it really boiled down to. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be protected, even if it was protected from myself or my own decisions.
Totally
It's
understand that.
Yes. And I remember someone early on in my healing journey telling me that your struggles today become the master class for someone tomorrow. And when I first heard that, I felt heavy because I like it's not that I didn't want to help back then, but like that's a heavy that's heavy. I'm already got all of this other stuff on me, and you're telling me that I need to heal so I can help somebody else. Can somebody help me figure it out? But what I've appreciated about this journey, particularly now where I am, I see why I had to go through what I went through. And it's not like I'm celebrating the fact that somebody bigger than myself chose me for this road to travel, but I get it. It gives me a level of empathy when I work with other people. It gives me compassion when I consider what why people did what they did to me. Like I'm in a space now where I kind of like well, I kind of want to know what made them like that. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Where I have compassion now, where prior to that, I was just filled with anger because I couldn't understand why me. Um, but you spoke a little bit about like, trying to understand your purpose in life.
Mhm.
And I think when you look in hindsight, once you uncover your purpose, it just seems like everything is a stepping stone to the point that gives you that awareness that you have a very special place in this world for a reason.
Agree.
Yeah, so let's talk about what it took for you to really put the pieces back together and get to this new season where, you're being impactful. What did that journey look like for you?
I remember having a discussion with my oldest son who's seen me at my worst. And he kind of got the brunt of a lot of, and not the brunt, I think he experienced a lot. He saw a lot. He saw me go through a lot. And because of that, he has some deep emotional trauma associated with it, right? So having discussions with him about his recollection of events was heart wrenching. That was the worst, some of the worst conversation I've ever had. To hear your son retell stories of you laying on a gurney, he remembers us going to the hospital. He remembers I jumped off a balcony, right? So he remembers these things. So again, in my healing journey, I don't beat myself up about it, but I do take responsibility for not protecting him from those things. And it's a fine line, right? Because you take responsibility, but then right there, it's like it's easy to beat yourself up and take yourself back down the road, right? Because now he suffers from deep mental health issues, and for a time, I took it really hard. But and that's another story for another day. But he had dabbled in some drugs, which attributed to that issue further. But I do believe that because of his childhood experiences, they did have a hand in that. So that was one of the turning points for me, just knowing that anything that I'm going through will definitely have an effect on my children, right? And now I have four. I have made it my purpose to be intentional about everything that happens and not to mask them from. So I've had very candid conversations with my older boys to the point where they're like, "What, mama? Like, why are you telling me this?" But I'm like, you need to know because one, I don't want you treating people a certain way. Like, you have to walk into this world with empathy and understanding that people are going through stuff that they may never tell you, you know? My boys are, and anybody will tell you, they're the most sweetest, empathetic boys. And I think that's attributed to the stories that I've told them and helped them to understand that this is the world that we live in. It's cruel and people are walking out here broken. You just have to understand that when you leave the house, that you have to treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's like the basis. It goes a lot further than that, but that's the basis. And then I got blessed twin girls. And when I tell you, I bawled my eyeballs out because where in the world am I getting with girls? After what I went through, I didn't want to be a hovering mom, but I was petrified. To say the least, I did not in my wildest dreams think that I would have girls and to be able to being pregnant with them. I had a lot of time to, and I was pregnant during COVID. Had a lot of time to think and reflect on just my childhood. And I'm like, how in the world am I going to do this? Because I'll kill everybody. That was just it. Like I would kill everybody. Just leave my girls alone. And it doesn't take away from the love for my boys, but because of what I'm been through, oh gosh, it was yeah, that was a horrible realization for me that I'm gonna be a mom of girls. So I think just my children in general have been like the catalyst for me to get myself out of that rut. Like they needed to see the mama not only survive or thrive, like to be able to live and not just exist. They see me countless nights up doing homework, trying to finish my degree, which I finally finished. Yeah, that's seen a lot, but I don't want them to see me struggling. I I need them to see me in a very in an empowered state.
Mhm.
And so that is my mission basically.
I have a question. How did you forgive yourself?
Ooh, I think after I guess piggybacking on what you were saying about just when you get into a state of empathy and understanding why people do the things that they do, and then have a conversation with family members. So one particular conversation was with my mom. So the man who molested me was her boyfriend. And I remember having a conversation with her, and I'm like, listen, do we need to go counsel him? I said, because something is, we're having a disconnect. And I feel like there's something that you've experienced or you've, whatever, dealt with that is attributed to my situation. And I was not wrong. So just these stories that she's told me made so much sense and put the pieces together to make me understand that I went through this stuff because my mama went through this stuff, because my grandmother went through this stuff. I don't know what this man went through, but he had to have been through something, right? To feel as though this was the right thing to do. I think then is when I understood that this wasn't about me. This was about people's trauma and not dealing with their trauma and the understanding that people either internalize and hurt themselves or they project and hurt other people. So in that, understanding that if I didn't heal myself and forgive myself, I'm gonna either hurt myself or hurt the people that I love. So that was part of my healing and
Hmm. And that's powerful, right? Like again, that consideration and compassion that comes along with the healing journey, it opens you up. It's a raw experience, but what's on the other side of that is grace and forgiveness. And
Mhm,
I'm not a person, I'm very honest, I'm not a person that advocates for forgiving other people before we forgive ourselves, because
mhm.
society expects us to make everybody
Yes.
else around us comfortable. This person hurt you, just forgive them because they're going through something. Well, no, I need to forgive myself, because why I ended up in multiple abusive relationships is because I wasn't in a place where I could take ownership for my actions, right? Like, no, I didn't abuse myself. No, I didn't molest myself. However, my decisions got me into
Mhm,
those positions, right? And until I can take ownership of the decisions that I made that put me sometimes in the wrong place at the wrong time, I can't honestly forgive other people. You know what I mean? I
mhm,
can't even make decisions with certainty. So clearly, I can't decide if I'm in a position to forgive somebody else before I
mhm,
forgive myself. But I just think, whatever we go through, it's our responsibility is to mend the broken pieces. And it may take decades. It takes many of us decades to figure that
mhm,
out, but it's
mhm.
still a responsibility because, as I've learned in my trauma influency, trauma can be passed on by eight
Oh yeah.
generations.
Oh yeah.
And that's a single trauma without any other
Yes.
compounded trauma, right? So, like one, and we see it particularly in Black people, the
Mhm.
slavery trauma is still being passed on, right?
Yes.
So that being compounded on the other experiences that we have in life, and then what's still not healing that, our poor children. No matter how hard we try, our
Yeah.
poor children are getting sucked into what we classify as generational curses, and really what it is unresolved trauma.
Yeah. And I think what people need to understand is that the forgiveness part, not everybody's going to agree with it. I had a conversation with somebody and just trying to explain to them the fact that, and particularly to do with my molester, trying to help understand people understand that clearly he went through something that triggered him to believe that this was okay. And for some reason, this person, whoever I was speaking to, translated that into I was condoning his behavior. No, no, that is not what I was saying. But all that to say, like people are not going to understand your journey and your the way you go about things. I ended up finding out where he is buried because I didn't know, going through the archives and asking for the plot and blah blah blah. And I wrote a letter to him, and it probably would have been exactly what I would have said in court. And I delivered it to his grave site and I burned it on this site. And that was my way of kind of just
Release.
letting it go, right? But again, not everybody's gonna understand your process. And it's not for anybody to understand, it's for you. And so, yeah, that's my little takeaway about forgiveness. Because it's been some really hard conversation where I'm like, listen, I'm not about to argue with you about how I'm processing my forgiveness. It's not for you.
Mhm.
But yeah.
And I think that boils down to acceptance. It's a level of acceptance, what you said just now, right? And people automatically relate acceptance to condoning, and it's not the
Yes.
same thing
No.
at all. When you can get to a level of acceptance in your journey, it's the most freeing thing. And yeah, I can still be angry at what
Mhm.
happened, but getting to a level of acceptance where I'm not fighting myself with my reality is key in being able to move forward, because oftentimes we will convince ourselves that our reality is something completely different, and that's what keeps us stuck. When I talk about accident survival mode, I say it happens in three phases. First is self-awareness. You can't change what you cannot see. Second is reprogramming. You have to change the narratives that you've been telling yourself. And third is reinvention. I believe that the person that I became in order to survive cannot take me into my next chapter. So I have to reestablish who I am. And you spoke about it, like from very young, you didn't know who you are. And I suspect that that was the story that you carried for most of your life until you got to a place where you could define it with certainty, with confidence, without attaching it to your trauma, without attaching it to the things that you done negatively, right? Being able to get to a place where you can define yourself, that takes an acceptance of everything else that you've been through and ownership of the things that you did wrong, right? A lot of people don't recognize that in order for us to heal, we have to earn. And that is part of that radical acceptance, which allows us to take radical ownership of our lives. So,
It's a lot, but yes.
it is. And which is why I love having these conversations. But thank you for sharing. How can a listener find you online?
Oh, there's so many avenues. So I am the co-founder of Made for More, Stories of Purpose. So you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and you can reach me there. You can also inbox me on my Instagram, my personal Instagram. It's underscore beautiful by design underscore. Or you can WhatsApp me, the number 7070114. Yeah, I'm an open book and I'm willing to help anybody who needs the help. If I can't help you, I'll direct you in the direction of the appropriate help.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being so open with us. Before we wrap it up, one key takeaway for the audience to action.
Wow. I think one key takeaway is just to understand that again, your beginning doesn't have to be an end. You were put on this earth for much more than you probably thought you were put on this earth for. And just make every day powerful and intentional.
Show up in your fullness. Thank you so much, Shanika, for your time. And thank you, audience, for catching another episode of Survival Made Disrupted. I want to remind you, you were not built to break, but you damn sure were not built to just survive. Disrupt the cycle, reclaim your life, and thrive on your own terms. And I'll see you next week. Once again, thank you for joining another episode of Survival Mode Disrupted, hosted by the Survival Mode Disruptor, Letitia. You didn't land here by accident. This conversation, it probably cracked something open on purpose because survival mode isn't just a phase, it's a pattern, an identity, a prison masked as strength. But here's the truth: you're not broken, you're just unfinished. So if something stirred in you today, don't ignore it, don't numb it, move with it. And I want to once again invite you to join Disrupting Survival Mode, the Facebook community where healing is loud and messy and real. I also want to invite you to buy my book, The Survival Mode Exit Plan, because your breakthrough deserves a blueprint. And if you felt seen today, be sure to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and drop a review. That's how we amplify the voices that need to be heard. And remember, this isn't about fixing yourself. This is about finding yourself again beneath the rubble. Until next time, choose ease, choose power, choose you. This is Survival Mode Disrupted.